Okay, everybody, welcome to this video, and I wanted to try and explain a little bit of how grading is going to work for some of these standards-based assessments, and especially when we're kind of doing formative assessments or assessments that build over a few weeks that lead up to a summative score for a unit. So formative is kind of like the process of learning, like learning as we go and kind of assessing as we go. And then summative is like the summary or the summation at the end of a unit, and it says how did you do on that standard for that unit. So this is for my geometry classes in particular. And a calendar of planning a unit or a couple of units might look something like this. So in our first week, maybe we're just getting started. And then after that, we can start assessing what we learned from the week before, and we'll call that like quiz A. So you see a 6A here, meaning that it's just the first layer of the content so far that we've gotten. It's not the full, complete version of the standard, but it's what we have so far. And then the next layer would be, we'll call it 6AB. And that would be the next week layer. But notice that it says 6AB, and it's implying that this assessment that's happening here is not just assessing or testing or questioning the second layer content, but it's the second layer and the stuff before the first layer. And then we finished with a third layer added on. And now we're complete, meaning that we've gone all the way through the unit and you're assessed on all the different layers of that standard, whether it's kind of the beginning level, the intermediate level, or the more complex versions of that standard. Now, what these quizzes look like, I'll probably make a separate video just showing a sample quiz and kind of how they're scored from a test sample version. But right now I just want to talk about the scoring of it in the gradebook to try and help explain that. Notice here that these different layers of the assessments are kind of different values, meaning that the first one, your max score would be a 2 because you haven't seen all of the content. You're not demonstrating a mastery of all of the content, just the first layer. But then you build on that. So the second time you're looking at an assessment, you can score up to a 3. And then the third time you can score up to a 4. Now for the standards-based grading, I'm going to stay consistent in that your grade that's calculated in the gradebook is on a 4-point scale. We describe those 4-point scales as exceed standard is a 4, meet standard is a 3, and then approaching the standard, meaning you're getting close, you're getting parts of it, but you're still missing some chunks, would be approaching standard at a 2. A 1 is, we call that in development, your development of your learning toward that standard or that topic for the class. So you're still at the very beginning stages. You might get some things right, but generally you're still just developing your learning. A 0 would be simply not enough evidence. Either you're not showing the evidence of how you're demonstrating your understanding. That could be a quiz where you submitted it but showed no work, so we have no idea where the answers came from. Or it could be that you're getting a lot of incorrect answers, so I don't have enough positive evidence to give a positive score. All right, so let's see how this might break down. These are 4 sample students here, sample W, X, Y, and Z. For W student, let's say in the first week they score a 2, and then they score 0 on the second week. That could be all of a sudden they just had a bad day, or they weren't understanding particular questions they were presented with that day. It could mean that they were absent, but an absent is like an empty score, and we'll call it a 0. And then on the third and final test, they're trying, but they're not scoring even as high as they did on the first one. What I do is I look at these 3 scores, and I take the highest number. So the highest score is a 2. Similarly, for student X here, the highest score that they scored across the unit was a 4. And for student Y, they have an empty score. They scored 2 out of 3 on the second layer, and then 0 by the time we got to the end. So the highest score here would be a 2. And then for the final one, the highest score was a 3. Now, just for completion's sake, I want to show what would happen on the next side. And on this side, it's the high score is a 1. Then we have a 3, and then a 4, and then a 1. So what I'm doing is I'm looking across the unit and seeing what is the high score, and I'm typing those in. All right, so the yellow area is like the formative assessments. Those are the assessments that kind of check. We have one a new assessment each week, but you do have 2 or 3 opportunities within that week to try and perform on it. And the highest score across the week counts. But the yellow is the formative, meaning it's kind of we're assessing as we go and seeing how we're learning and trying to get feedback on it. The summative score is my score that's at the end. And now when I look at this, I could see that I have a 2 out of 4, so I'm like a halfway on my Unit 6 topic, and I have a 1 out of 4 on my Unit 7 topic. So I'm approaching standard for Unit 6, and I'm still in development for Unit 7. And then let's look at student Y here. For student Y, I'm still approaching standard for Unit 6, but I'm exceeding the standard for Unit 7. So I'm not only getting everything right, but showing full and complete work, and probably performing that multiple times over. Not just one time, but I'm able to repeat my performance. Okay, now the big question is like, okay, I start to understand these scores. You give the scores each week. Why does it say out of 2, out of 3, out of 4? Well, at first, in that first level quiz, we haven't completed the content, so you can't show that you exceeded the entire unit when you haven't completed the entire unit. So the quiz score potential, like the possible score, increases each week until you hit the final week. And that's when you can get up to a 4. Could a student be lazy for the entire bit of the unit and then at the very end score a 4 out of 4? They could. Is it likely that some student who has not been practicing formatively over time is going to perform have high levels of performance at the end? It's not likely, but they could. It is possible. What does this look like as a letter grade on the transcript? Well, these are our percentage breakdowns that match up with our standards-based grading. An A starts at 87.5, a B starts at 68.5, a C starts at 50, and a D starts at 32.5%. So that's the scale that I use for my grade book in my class. And what would this look like with the scores here? Well, student W, if you added up their 2 and 1 out of 8 total, so we're kind of looking at just the green columns here, the summative scores, those are the actual calculated scores into the grade. That's a 37.5. That is passing with a D, but it's a low performance kind of rating. This student that got a 4 out of 4 on one unit and a 3 out of 4 on the next unit is at an A minus, 87.5. A student that got a 2 out of 4 on one unit and a 4 out of 4 on another, they would be in the B range, because the B range starts at 68.5 and goes up to 87.5. And similarly, the student Z here is scoring a 50% because they scored a 3 out of 4 and a 1 out of 4, but overall that kind of averages out to a 2 out of 4 across all the units. That's a 50%. That would earn a C minus in the class, or like the lowest possible C. Okay, so that's kind of a quick explanation of how the grading works. I will try to do a couple more videos explaining like on how to access these quizzes and policies with retaking the quizzes, and how that works when you might miss an earlier quiz, but instead you retake it later, and how the scoring works with that. But this is to help try and explain some of the grade breakdown and how the assignments are looking in the grade book. You should see these assignments in the grade book, but I want you to be able to interpret the numbers. That's all. Thank you.